Hello， 大家好 ，L 喺度 ，for M 今次就 update 咧就 iOS 16.1，iOS 16.1啦，隻新嘅 iPad OS。大概如果你用 Dave 係 download 咧就4.7.2G 啊，咁啊都幾貴啊。大嘅。
Now, because I covered all of the different updates to iOS 16 in a different video that was over an hour long, I thought I'd cover just what's new on the iPad side. All of the iOS 16 updates are coming to iPad along with specific iPad updates. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's new. With iPadOS 16, we don't have the customization that we do on the lock screen with widgets and different wallpapers that we do with iOS 16. Maybe they'll add some of this customization in the future, but it's not available here. So if you're looking for it and you just installed it, unfortunately it won't be there. We do have a new wallpaper, though. If we go under Settings and then Wallpaper, choose a new wallpaper. Under Stills, we have the typical iOS and iPadOS 16 wallpaper. So we can set that if we want to use it. And you'll have new wallpapers if you have new M2 iPads or the new base iPad. So that's something that will have wallpapers specific to those devices, but they're not included on this one. So as we scroll down, you'll see they're not there. Now, the first new feature that you'll see immediately is we have weather. Weather has been on iPhone for quite some time. Now it's available on iPad with all of the same information, just laid out a little bit differently. So as we scroll down, you'll see our different forecast. We have our map, our air quality, and more. The UV index and all of the regular information.
呢個天氣 app 咧，呢個係新加入喺iPad 嘅，呢個好即係好過你之前你喺 iPhone 成日撳要睇。撳上網站，而家呢個就解決咗嘅。
We're looking at as far as the overall forecast, UV index, wind, precipitation.
咁啊，我而家我地方陣間睇睇下咧，就係
Again, very similar to iOS, but laid out a little bit differently.
就係佢 layout 嘅時候係唔同啲㗎。首先就係個天氣 app 啊，就而家咧唔使再係一個網站，而家咧一睇咧就已經係。提當地嘅天氣啊，咁你可以睇到佢嗰個即係個 UV index 好多紫外線指數好多嚟緊嘅幾日天氣啦，亦都睇下好多嘢嘅，有 different forecast 啦，跟住仲有咧，咁啊呢個有個好嘅就係有個 UV 有睇風啦，喺度 visibility 啦，個 pressure 啦氣壓啦，跟住就有嗰個佢嘅溫度啦，同埋佢嘅紫外線指數係幾多。
The overall forecast, the UV index, wind, precipitation, feels like humidity, visibility, and pressure. So all of those things are here. Of course, you don't have to use this weather app, but it's available if you want to use it. One of the standout features is Stage Manager. Stage Manager is only available on specific iPads. On iPad Pro, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th generation all support that, as well as the M1-based iPad.
M1-based
iPad Air do not support Stage Manager.
Stage Manager
now, in order to enable this, you'll have an option in your control center. If you add it, you'll see the button there. You can also go to Settings, go down to Home Screen and Multitasking, and turn it on here.
呢度就有得嘅打開嘅 Stage Manager。咁呢個咧你就要有即係如果你係行3、4、5、6嘅 iPad 第3、4、5、6代嘅 iPad， 同埋咧 M1 set 嘅 iPad Air 咧係可以用嘅。
If you're not seeing it in Control Center, just go down and add it. You'll see Stage Manager and lists of controls below. Now let's go ahead and enable it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Now, if we go into Safari, you'll see it brings up a window.
係啊，就咁樣啦，變咗個 window 出嚟㗎，好過你之前咁嘅。即係如果你用即係如果你用緊第6，即係呢個功能咧，就部分 iPad support 到嘅啫。嗱，呢個要留意。
Resize this window.
你可以 release 個 size 添喎，仲可以勁啊
！So if I go into maybe Files, it switches
Files
out. If I go into Weather, it switches to Weather. And again, I can resize any of these.
可以 resize 添喎，呢個好勁啊
！It goes into Settings, and if I resize that, and maybe I want Settings open with Weather, I press and hold, drag.
Press and hold 咧可以開埋第二嚿嘢都得㗎，呢個係比較好嘅功能嚟㗎。Stage Manager
of settings. This allows you to do this up to 4 different applications. So maybe we want to bring in another app. We swipe over from the left, and then maybe we'll bring in Safari, drag it here. Now we have a full workspace. And then we can switch between maybe Home, back to Files, back to our workspace here with Safari, Weather, and Settings. So we have all of those options. Like I said, up to 4 apps. You can bring those in. If I try to bring in a 5th app, it won't work. It will kick one of the apps out.
Kick one of the app
Now
out
we can
嘅，而
also
家你用
use split view, of course. So if
Split
we go
view.
in and tap here, we have the option to go to full screen,
Full
add
screen.
another window, or minimize. So we have controls at the top.
你可以揀嘅。
But if we turn off Stage
識咗嘅咩？
Manager, it goes back and immediately goes into split view.
就變咗
Now,
split
if I
view
want
㗎啦
to。use
OK，吸翻嚟先。咁啊，而家咧我就咁啊，佢呢個 update 咧就都幾勁嘅。咁我有個家人共享啊，仲有嗰個。首先咧就有軟件更新先啦。嗱，16.1，佢本機嘅 build number 係仲錯唔錯正啦？咁去翻控制中心，頭先有個咁啊，換咗啲 wallpaper 先。熄機咗嚟㗎啦，係新嘅。有一樣好嘅嘢咧，就係佢嘅天氣 app 啊。係啦，咁可以睇到佢當日嘅天氣啦、溫度啦。咁啊，睇埋其他信息啦。咁跟住亦都有最高24度，咁可以睇到佢嗰個紫外線指數而家係咁啊。咁呢個 Stage Manager 咧就係
Split View and bring in a different app. We have new controls at the top where we have the option for Split View.
分角顯示咧 Side Over。
Apple's made this a little more clear this year, so we'll select our app, tap Safari, and it brings it into Split View. If I want to bring in Slide Over, I can bring in a Slide Over app as well, or move this one into Slide Over. It's really easy compared to what it was before, as it's giving you more context and telling you exactly what's going on. So that's something they've updated in iPadOS 16. Windows, so maybe you want to bring a file from one into the other. If we go back into Stage Manager, bring it over, go to Files, maybe in a future update. They had some issues initially so external display support is only mirroring it this time. Eventually it will allow for full external display support as well. Now with the latest M1 iPads, with the
reference mode,
what we have with different apps now, making them consistent across podcasts. If we go different resolutions, using it with an external monitor, and it worked really well for a while in the betas, but it's not available now. Now the next thing they've updated is podcasts. If we go into podcasts, you'll see here, it just looks a little different. So we have all of our podcasts listed on the left as far as listen, browse, charts, and search. We have our menu bar with all of our different podcasts on the right. So
呢個 podcast 喺右邊嘅，呢個 podcast app 嘅一個最新嘅 update。係啦，後面就有嗰啲咩最近播嘅嘢啦嚇。OK， 好。
You'll see all of those here. It's just a redesign of it. It looks very similar to what we have with different apps now, making them consistent across the whole UI. Apple introduces what they're calling desktop class apps with iPadOS 16, meaning there's more consistency, and all of them look more similar to what we have on macOS. So if we go into Files, we have our options in the upper right along with Search, and then you've got different options for icons, list, columns, and more. If we go into maybe Notes, you'll see here's a note. We can now customize the toolbar. So if we tap on the three dots in the upper right, we can customize the toolbar, and that allows us to rearrange or remove any that we don't want, or add them if there's additional ones. The same is true if we go into Reminders. You'll see Reminders here. Again, tap the three dots in the upper right, customize toolbar, and then we can remove or drag any of these around. So Apple's making this more consistent, giving us a search bar in the upper toolbar, and that allows us to rearrange or remove any that we don't want, or add them if there's additional ones. The same is true if we go into Reminders. You'll see Reminders here. Again, tap the three dots in the upper right, customize toolbar, and then we can remove or drag any of these around. So Apple's making this more consistent, giving us a search bar in the upper left or upper right, and just making it a little bit easier with more context. So when you select multiple items, for example, so maybe we go back into Files, if we tap on Select and select multiple items, we have the option to delete them all, move them, share them, or if we tap on More in the bottom right, we can copy 4 items, rotate them right,
remove the background,
and it allows you to do more things at once more easily. If we tap on Done, then tap Search, Search has been updated to allow for find and replace across the system. So if we're looking for maybe Apple, you'll see we have Apple here, and then again we can find and replace across the system, copy, paste, everything is just easier across everything. Also, Undo and Redo is now available in Files, Photos, and Calendar. Now, if you're using Apple Pencil with Scribble, there's been some updates there as well. You can now use Scribble to put an emoji in place, and also they've made the menus larger as you're scribbling in a specific area. So if we go into a message here, and maybe we write the word Apple, you'll see the box expanded to make it easier to input text, and also you can draw emoji and they'll show up in here. That sometimes doesn't seem to work 100% of the time, but it is something that is allowed to work with Scribble now, or has been added. If we go into Notes, they've added some new pens as well. So if we tap on the upper right and bring up the little dialog to show our different pens and pencils, we have a few different ones. We have Monoline, so this is a new one. Just have Monoline. We also have watercolor and fountain pens. We need to scroll over here a little bit. You'll see a fountain pen. So if we write Zollotech, you'll see there's a fountain pen, and then again watercolor. So we have watercolor colors options here as well, and you can blend them and everything else. So that's something they've added with iPadOS 16. Now, as I said, many of the features in iPadOS 16 are the same as iOS 16, such as messages. So maybe we type, "This is a test message," send this in Messages, press and hold as long as they have iOS 16 or newer. Tap undo send. We can edit it. And then we have all of the new Memoji and more. So all of those things are in iPadOS 16. The same is true with Mail, with undo send, and more. With iPadOS 16, we have an all-new Game Center design. If we go into settings, scroll down, you'll see below podcasts, we have Game Center. And this doesn't look too different, but we now have the option for editing our avatar, profile privacy, allow finding by friends, request from contacts only, nearby players, and connect with friends. We can also go into our profile here and see our different achievements, our friends, what you've recently played, and how you've done against others. So you can sort of compete if you want to do that. You can also play together with SharePlay as well. Now, this update does bring support for the Nintendo Joy-Con controllers as well, just like it did on iOS 16. So if you want to use those controllers with your iPad, you can now do that.
Nintendo Joystick 落去添嘅 PS4、PS5、Xbox 都可以 support 到啦。
And to help with games, this now has Metal 3 for game acceleration. It helps games load more quickly and accelerates performance overall. That's something they've added with iPadOS 16. The Home app gets an all-new design as well. So you'll see Home, just like they redesigned it on the iPhone, it has a new design here. So it's the same sort of layout, but different for the iPad. Again, with the menu on the left and everything on the right, with different options for your scenes, different cameras if you have them. When I'm near this camera, it actually shuts off. And of course, our options in the upper right. We can go to Home Settings, and under Home Settings, if we scroll down, you can see things such as software updates for your HomePods and more. That makes it a little bit easier to update. And then also we have some new wallpaper. So we can choose from existing. There's a bunch of wallpapers in here. We can set those as backdrops for the iPad. So we'll just set that one. Of course, they've added Matter support as well, so if you have new Matter accessories, that will be supported with the latest update. Within the system of iPadOS 16, Apple has added the ability of something called Virtual Memory Swap, which uses the storage of the iPad as additional available memory for apps with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's available on iPad Air, the M1 and newer, so you need to have that as well as 256 gigabytes of storage.
256
嘅 storage 係
貨你新嘅 M 乜嗰啲
something that will allow for real-time collaboration across devices, iPad, Mac, iOS, and will be available later on. They showed this when they introduced iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, and you can see what it looks like here. It's 256 gigabytes of storage. Now, also, there's an app that's coming soon called Freeform. Freeform is something that will allow for real-time collaboration across devices, iPad, Mac, iOS, and will be available later on. They showed this when they introduced iOS 16 and iPadOS 16, and you can see what it looks like here. It's basically a whiteboard that allows for collaboration in real time, so that's something coming a little bit later. And everything else other than that is the same across iOS 16. So everything from Mail to Messages to different apps such as TV and more, news with sports, and even your system settings. All of that is the same. So if we go into Photos and you have duplicate photos, it will show duplicates. You also have the hidden and recently deleted folders that are locked now. Again, everything is the same as iOS 16 now. So there's a lot of consistency across everything, but I just wanted to share with you what's new specific to the iPad. And so that's everything with iPadOS 16.1. Of course, it's not that big if you look at it just from the iPad side, but if you include everything with iOS 16, it's a huge update, 150 plus updates.
So 咁係啦，就係咁樣一個 update 啦嚇。So that's it for iOS 16.1條片咧，就已經都好特別㗎。咁啊，佢有至少都150個 update 啊。咁大概咧都
be sure to check out the other video.
be sure 到留意最新嘅片單，可能有啲of course 咁你一定有啲新嘢係俾我哋去支援係啦。就 that's it for iOS 16.iPadOS 16.1啦，條片都特別啊，有150個 update 啊，就係 for 好多個 Home app 啦，好多嘢都變咗啦。嚟緊呢個出新 app Freeform 啦，呢個可能新嘅。咁另外就係佢有個 additional update 咧，上都有得 update 嘅。咁大概都唔係咁話大嘅，但係算係一個 big app size 入面iOS 16算係一個大 update， for 150個 plus 嘅 update 啦。同埋可能留意住最新嘅更新片段，可能有 follow up 留意住 solo 劇。咁記得咧就如果想睇咩咧就留意啦。有冇 redo 咁啊？記得就 like 記得如果未 like 嘅就快啲去 like 咗 video 啦 ，subscribe 留意住最新片段。As always，多謝大家收睇，我係 Aaron，下一集見。